Have you ever looked closely at an organization, maybe one filled with, brilliant, dedicated people, and just scratched your head wondering why they still struggle?
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time.
Why do some companies, despite massive investments and seemingly cutting-edge strategies, falter with employee engagement, innovation, or even their very long-term survival?
It's a recurring puzzle, isn't it?
It really is. We see the symptoms everywhere. Cycles of mass layoffs, cutthroat internal politics, ethical lapses that make headlines.
Or those baffling moments when leaders reward toxic behavior, even when it hurts the team.
Exactly. It truly is a perplexing pattern.
It's almost as if these organizations and the leaders guiding them are fundamentally misinterpreting the very game they believe they're playing.
Misinterpreting the game. How so?
Well, they possess all the necessary resources, talent, capital, technology, but they're operating under, let's say, a flawed understanding of the rules. Or perhaps trying to win a game that, well, it was never designed to have a definitive end.
That's it, exactly. And that fundamental misunderstanding is precisely what our deep dive is all about today. We're unpacking the insights from a profound book that completely redefines how we think about success, strategy, and especially leadership.
Right. And at its core, the premise is elegantly simple, really. There are two distinct types of games in life, finite and infinite.
Okay, let's break that down. Finite games first.
Let's start with the familiar. A finite game is one we intuitively understand. It has a finite number of known players, everyone agrees upon a fixed set of rules, and there's a very clear, measurable objective.
Like winning a championship.
Exactly. There's a definitive beginning, a middle, and a definitive end. Think of a football match, a chess game, or even a classic sprint race.
You play to win, right? And when the whistle blows or checkmate is called or you cross the finish line?
The game is definitively over. The goal is singular. Victory. Simple.
But then we have infinite games, and these sound different.
Oh, they are. They're truly fascinating because they operate on an entirely different set of principles. They have both known and unknown players.
Meaning new people can just jump in?
Yep, new participants can join at any time. And the rules aren't exact or universally agreed upon. Instead, they exist within, let's say, broad boundaries. Players can actually choose to bend or even break with convention if they believe it serves their larger purpose.
Okay, that's interesting. And you said no finish line.
That's the absolute kicker. There is no finish line, no clear end. The primary objective in an infinite game isn't to win, because you literally cannot win it.
So what's the point then?
The objective is simply to keep playing, to perpetuate the game itself, and to ensure it continues for future generations of players.
Wow. Okay. And this is where the profound insight lies, you're saying?
Exactly. What we often fail to recognize, or perhaps choose to ignore, is that many of the most significant aspects of our lives, our businesses, our political landscapes, our education systems, even our personal relationships and life journeys, are in fact infinite games.
And if we treat them like finite games?
That's where the trouble starts. If we mistakenly apply a finite mindset to an infinite game, we inevitably run into all sorts of profound problems. We declare victory where no true victory can exist.
And we make decisions that, in the long run, actively sabotage our ability to keep playing, to adapt, and to truly thrive. It undermines the whole thing.
Precisely. We end up undermining our own resilience.
So our mission today is to deeply unpack the critical differences between these two mindsets. We'll reveal how a finite approach can derail even the most promising organizations.
And then we'll dive into 5 essential practices for leading with an infinite mindset.
Consider this your shortcut to not just understanding these powerful concepts, but to grasping how you can apply them for truly profound, lasting impact in whatever infinite game you find yourself playing, whether it's leading a team, running a business, or navigating your own career.
Yeah, it's applicable everywhere, really.
So let's get into it. Why is this idea of finite versus infinite thinking so fundamentally crucial, especially in business? You might logically assume that after centuries of human history, where we've witnessed incredible progress driven by what is essentially infinite thinking.
Like breakthroughs in science, monumental advancements in medicine, exploring space.
Right. Or the very building of great societies that modern business would naturally gravitate towards that same long-term, perpetuating perspective. After all, these grand human endeavors all happened because large groups of people united around a common cause with no clear, achievable end in sight.
It's a compelling point, isn't it? Historically, if a rocket prototype crashed, The engineers didn't just, throw their hands up and quit, focus solely on the quarterly budget.
No way.
They figured out what went wrong, iterated, and tried again and again. Not for an end-of-year bonus, but because they felt they were contributing to something much bigger, something that would last beyond their individual lifetimes.
Yet, despite this historical precedent, modern business too often defaults to a finite mindset. It's almost ironic, isn't it? Playing a finite game in an infinite field.
It is ironic. And this, I'd argue, is the root of so many pervasive problems we see today.
And the symptoms of this finite thinking are alarmingly common, almost like standard operating procedure for some companies.
Oh, definitely.
Think about those annual mass layoffs where companies cut jobs not because of fundamental business failure, but simply to meet some arbitrary financial projection for the quarter or year.
Right. Hitting the numbers becomes the only goal.
Or the rise of cutthroat work environments where internal competition is prioritized over collaboration, creating that dog-eat-dog culture.
We constantly see leaders who appear subservient to shareholders, often at the direct expense of their own employees, customers, and even the community.
And then there are the dishonest and unethical business practices that frequently make headlines.
And perhaps most baffling of all, the decision to reward high-performing yet deeply toxic team members, despite the corrosive damage they inflict on morale, trust, and overall teamwork.
It just poisons the well, doesn't it?
Yes, and these are often leaders who, whether consciously or not, prioritize their own career advancement or financial gains over the well-being of those in their charge. The consequences are stark and measurable.
Like a widespread decline of loyalty within organizations.
Exactly. Plummeting employee engagement and a pervasive increase in insecurity and anxiety among the workforce. It's gotten so deeply embedded in our culture that the very search for work-life balance has become an entire industry unto itself.
Simply because the work itself has become so unfulfilling, so lacking in purpose for so many people.
The profound takeaway here is that this isn't just about individual managers or bad apples. It's a systemic outcome of misapplying a finite mindset to an infinite reality.
It's a clear, flashing red light signaling a system that is fundamentally out of balance. And what's truly telling is how often we hear leaders in these organizations talking about winning.
Oh, constantly. They obsess about beating the competition, crushing the market, or being number one.
But the inherent paradox, the critical insight, is that in an infinite game, these are impossible objectives. You can't win the game of business any more than you can win the game of life, right?
Exactly. The game simply continues.
So the game of business, by its very definition, is an infinite game.
Precisely. Consider the players. They are known, your employees, customers, partners, rivals, but also unknown.
Because new competitors, new tech, new talent can emerge anytime.
Exactly. New market forces can shift everything. There's no fixed set of rules everyone has agreed to beyond the basic framework of the law, and even that can vary significantly by country or region.
Players determine their own strategies and tactics, and they can change them whenever.
Right, based on evolving circumstances. And critically, there's no predetermined beginning, middle, or end. Financial years, quarterly reports, annual goals. These are just arbitrary markers.
Time frames we impose for evaluation, not finish lines.
Exactly. The game fundamentally just keeps going. The goal, therefore, must be to sustain your ability to play, not to achieve some final victory.
We've seen this profound clash of mindsets play out with major household name companies, often with devastating consequences, like Microsoft and their Zune.
Oh, the Zune. Yeah, that's a classic. Back in 2006, Microsoft was desperately trying to go head-to-head with Apple's iPod, which seemed totally dominant.
And Steve Ballmer, the CEO then, was super confident they could beat Apple.
He really was. And to be fair, if product quality and technical specs were the only factors, he might have had a point. The Zune HD, launched a few years later, was, by many accounts, technically exceptional.
Well-designed, good interface, user-friendly.
It truly was a well-engineered device, a testament to Microsoft's capabilities. But here's where the finite mindset led to a critical misstep. They designed the Zune so it was not compatible with iTunes.
Apple's dominant music platform. That was deliberate.
Oh yeah, a deliberate choice aimed at forcing customers to choose between ecosystems to win a finite battle over market share. What makes this decision even more puzzling and highlights the finite thinking is that the iPod itself was compatible with Microsoft Windows.
So Apple played nice, but Microsoft didn't.
Basically, Microsoft was playing for a zero-sum victory rather than engaging in the broader infinite game of how people consume and enjoy music.
And what's truly telling about the scenario is Apple's reaction. Didn't one of their execs just kind of shrug it off?
Pretty much. One Apple executive, when asked about the Zune, was completely unfazed. He wasn't arrogant. He simply seemed focused on something far beyond a single product launch or quarterly sales figures.
An infinite mindset.
Exactly. Focused on the long game of innovation and user experience, not on beating a competitor in a single product category. They understood the objective was to keep creating, not just to win a current market share battle.
And Ballmer's finite thinking was even clearer later, right, with the iPhone.
Oh, absolutely. In 2007, when Apple released the original iPhone, he famously scoffed at its potential, saying, and I'm quoting here, "There's no chance that the iPhone is going to get any significant market share. No chance."
Wow. Famous last words.
Right. He said, "I'd prefer to have our software in 60% or 70% or 80% of them than I would have 2% or 3%, which is what Apple might get." He was entirely focused on market share percentages and existing revenue streams.
Completely missing how the iPhone was about to redefine the entire mobile market. Shifting the game.
Totally. From phones to smartphones, transforming the role these devices play in our daily lives. His strategic blind spot was a direct result of this finite focus.
And the cascading impact of this finite mindset on Microsoft's internal culture was severe, wasn't it?
It really was. The company became almost solely obsessed with meeting quarterly numbers and beating immediate competitors. They lost much of that early inspiration, imagination, and innovation that had defined their rise.
Trust and cooperation declined.
Sharply. Internal product groups started fighting, actively undermining each other's efforts, driven by internal metrics and competition. What was once described as a lean competition machine led by young visionaries mutated into something.
Bloated. Bureaucratic.
Exactly. Bloated and bureaucracy-laden, a place where innovative ideas were stifled and the will of its people was just sapped. It's a textbook example of how a finite mindset can deeply damage a company's inner workings, hindering its ability to adapt and innovate in an infinite game.
Ultimately accelerating its decline in some way.
And this finite versus infinite distinction isn't just about the corporate world. It has profound life and death implications in other infinite games, like geopolitics. Take the Vietnam War.
Okay, yeah.
U.S. leadership, particularly Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense at the time, approached it with a classic finite war mindset. They assumed there was a clear objective, like halting communism or achieving a specific military victory.
A clear end where they could declare victory, like in World War II, they were fighting to win.
But the North Vietnamese were playing an entirely different game. Their perspective was fundamentally infinite.
How so?
Well, decades after the war, McNamara met Nguyen Co Thach, the North Vietnamese foreign ministry specialist. Thach famously and quite pointedly scolded McNamara. He said, and again I quote, "You must never have read a history book.
Ouch.
If you had, you'd know we weren't pawns of the Chinese or the Russians. Don't you understand that we've been fighting the Chinese for 1,000 years? We were fighting for our independence."
Wow, that reframes everything.
Completely. He continued, and we would fight to the last man. And we were determined to do so. And no amount of bombing, no amount of U.S. pressure would ever have stopped us.
That exchange perfectly encapsulates the devastating clash of mindsets.
It does. The North Vietnamese were fighting for an infinite ideal, self-determination and independence. Their goal wasn't a land grab or a specific battle victory. It was the perpetuity of their national identity.
And the clues were there for the U.S. to see if they had looked through an infinite lens.
Absolutely. There was no clear beginning, middle, or end to America's involvement. There was no clear political objective that, when achieved, would signal a definitive victory. The U.S. simply misunderstood their enemy's true motivation.
Viewing it as a finite proxy war instead of an infinite struggle for sovereignty.
Exactly. The profound takeaway here is that you cannot win an infinite game if the other side is playing for something as fundamental as its very existence or an enduring ideal. You can only lose the will to keep playing.
What these powerful examples highlight, both in business and geopolitics, is that when we lead with a finite mindset in an infinite game, we inevitably encounter immense, predictable problems. Decline of trust, breakdown in cooperation, stifling of innovation.
But the reverse is also profoundly true. Leading with an infinite mindset in an infinite game truly moves us in a far better direction. Groups and organizations that successfully adopt an infinite mindset enjoy vastly higher levels of trust.
They foster deep cooperation, ignite true innovation.
and ultimately achieve greater long-term success, resilience, and longevity. The fundamental insight is that aligning your mindset with the nature of the game you're playing isn't just beneficial, it's essential for enduring health and success.
Okay, so if we want to build organizations or even lead lives that can truly endure and thrive in the long game, we need to adopt this infinite perspective.
Exactly. We must first learn to recognize the game we're in and then adopt the mindset and practices necessary to lead infinitely. It's not a buffet where you pick and choose. It's a holistic approach. Each practice reinforces the others.
Creating a virtuous cycle of sustained success. And that leads us perfectly into the 5 essential practices for infinite thinking. These aren't just abstract ideas, they are actionable frameworks. The first, and perhaps most foundational practice, is to advance a just cause.
Okay, a just cause. What exactly is that? It sounds important.
It is. This isn't about winning a competition, but about perpetually advancing something truly bigger than ourselves or our organizations.
So it's a vision, an ideal future state, a vision of the world we hope to build, one that inspires and endures.
Exactly. It's inherently affirmative and inclusive, designed to welcome diverse players, employees, customers, partners, even former competitors, to contribute their unique talents towards a shared purpose.
And it has to be service-oriented, focusing on who benefits beyond the organization itself.
Yes, extending far beyond the organization to encompass customers, communities, maybe even humanity. Crucially, it must be resilient, capable of enduring significant political, technological, and cultural shifts.
And infinite.
Yeah.
Right. An ideal that can never be fully achieved, demanding continuous advancement.
Precisely. And finally, a true just cause is worthy of sacrifice. It inspires people to give their blood, sweat, and tears to work beyond just a paycheck for something truly meaningful.
We see a profoundly moving and powerful example of this in the story of Nikolai Vavilov, the Russian botanist during the siege of Leningrad in World War II.
Oh, the seed bank story. That's incredible.
It really is. As the city was gripped by a brutal famine, hundreds of thousands starving, scientists working under Vavilov died amidst piles of edible seeds, grains, potatoes, rice. They could have eaten them to survive.
To prolong their own finite lives, but they didn't.
Their actions weren't born of delusion, but of an unwavering commitment to a just cause they understood as a mission for all humanity. Their purpose was to preserve the genetic diversity of crops for future generations.
Ensuring the future of humanity's food supply, not just surviving the siege.
Exactly, an infinite vision. This deep commitment gave their work a meaning that transcended individual survival, and their legacy continues today, with nearly 2,000 seed banks worldwide, including the Svalbard Global Seed Vault in the Arctic.
Embodying Vavilov's infinite vision, it shows a just cause can literally inspire people to sacrifice their lives for an ideal that benefits others far into the future.
Another incredible foundational example is the very founding of the United States.
Right, the Declaration of Independence.
When the Founding Fathers declared independence, they knew such a radical act needed a clear, compelling, and enduring just cause to unite the colonies and inspire generations. They articulated it famously. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Not just about borders or winning a war, but an ideal future state.
Exactly. This infinite vision, this aspirational declaration, has inspired subsequent generations to sacrifice, to struggle, and to continue advancing it through abolition, women's suffrage, civil rights, LGBTQ+ rights.
These are all milestones toward an unachievable, infinite ideal, steps forward in a journey that never ends.
Constantly pushing society closer to that proclaimed ideal.
So, given how powerful a just cause is, what is it not? It's definitely not a moonshot or a BHAG, right? A big, hairy, audacious goal.
Correct. While those can be incredibly inspiring, like Kennedy's challenge to put a man on the moon, they are ultimately achievable, finite goals within the infinite game. Once achieved, their initial inspiration has an expiration date.
And just jumping from one BHA to another leads to finite exhaustion.
Exactly. Employees get burnt out constantly chasing the next short-term win without a deeper, enduring purpose. A just cause isn't a motivational poster. It's the bedrock that prevents that exhaustion. It ensures your organization has a reason to exist beyond quarterly reports.
Inviting sustained passion and loyalty. Okay, so it's also not simply about being the best.
No. Take Garmin. Their stated vision was to be the global leader in every market, focusing primarily on product quality. In 2007, they were undeniably the leader in dash-mounted GPS.
They were the best.
But when smartphones emerged with built-in navigation, Garmin's product-centric, best-in-class vision left them clinging to their old hardware model.
They missed the boat on apps.
Completely missed the massive opportunity to develop a go-to navigation app for mobile phones, because their focus was on their own hardware, not the broader value for customers or the infinite game of helping people navigate. Plus, that kind of vision marginalizes non-engineering employees.
Makes them feel secondary.
Right.
And it's certainly not just about growth for growth's sake.
Definitely not. Imagine your neighbor packing his car for a vacation, but when you ask where he's going, he just says, "I'm going to drive 300 miles per day."
Pointless, aimless, growth without purpose.
Exactly. Movement without direction. Nor is corporate social responsibility, CSR, automatically a just cause.
Even though it's good stuff, like donating to charity or environmental initiatives.
While commendable, yes, those are good things. But they are not a just cause if they're treated as side activities, an add-on, rather than being core to the business's very being. True service must be a touchstone, a fundamental guiding principle, not merely an ornament or a marketing tactic.
Peripheral CSR can't offset a finite culture.
Not if the core decisions are still driven by finite thinking.
So if a just cause is so vital, who guards it? Who's the keeper of the cause?
That's where leadership comes in. The responsibility falls most heavily on the person at the top. Leaders must embody, articulate, and fiercely protect the just cause. Think Sam Walton at Walmart.
His just cause was crystal clear: to serve the average working American by offering the lowest prices anytime, anywhere.
Simple, powerful. It guided every single decision, store locations, inventory pricing, and crucially, it generated immense loyalty and even love from both his employees and his customers.
But sadly, after Walton's passing, things changed under his successor, Mike Duke.
Yeah, the focus gradually shifted. It became centered on market share growth and maximizing returns for Wall Street, fundamentally prioritizing external financial markets over his own people and customers.
You could even see it in his language, right? The order of words reveals priorities.
Absolutely. This finite shift led to multiple scandals, plummeting employee morale, and communities actively resisting new Walmart stores. They weren't seen as a service anymore, but as a threat. It shows even a powerful just cause can erode if not diligently protected.
This highlights a crucial need within organizations then. Maybe the CEO shouldn't be focused only on operations.
Right. The most senior person, the CEO, should ideally focus up and out, beyond the immediate confines, squarely on the cause itself and its impact on the world. General Laurie Robinson put it well, "I will go up and out. I need you to go down and in."
Suggesting a need for maybe a chief vision officer, a CVO.
Exactly. A CVO role, working in partnership with operational leaders like a COO or CFO who manage resources and execution. Like in the military, officers and enlisted have different non-competing roles, collaborating towards a shared purpose.
This leads us to a revised understanding of business responsibility for today.
Yes. Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, the world's largest money manager, articulated this shift. He advocated for companies to build with more idealistic goals than just near-term financial gains.
He argued that purpose is essential for full potential.
Yeah, he said, quite powerfully, without a sense of purpose, no company can achieve its full potential. It will ultimately lose the license to operate from key stakeholders. It's becoming a business imperative.
And this directly challenges Milton Friedman's old theory that business's only responsibility is shareholder profit.
It does. That finite view, prioritizing only shareholders, has unfortunately led to a severe imbalance. Investors often act like renters, focused purely on short-term gains rather than owners invested in the long-term health.
I've seen the disillusionment, right? Occupy Wall Street, populist messages.
From across the spectrum, Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump, people are tired of systems that prioritize profit over purpose.
So the new paradigm, the infinite view.
It demands that businesses must primarily advance a purpose. This means fostering genuine belonging and value for employees, serving customers and communities with integrity, and creating long-term sustainable value for all stakeholders.
Not just shareholders.
Right. Money, in this enlightened view, is not the purpose itself, but rather a result, a consequence of successfully fulfilling that deeper purpose. This shift is absolutely essential for any organization hoping to thrive and endure.
Okay, that makes sense. Moving on to our second essential practice. Build trusting teams. This feels connected to the just cause.
Absolutely. They go hand in hand. An infinite game requires both will The desire, commitment, morale, the human spirit, and resources, money, capital, assets.
And the trap is that finite leaders focus only on resources.
Often, yes. They excel at managing resources, counting every penny. But they either completely ignore the human will, or worse, try to extract it like a commodity, squeezing people for every last drop of effort.
There was that story about the Four Seasons valet, Noah.
Yes, a great illustration. Noah genuinely loved his job there. Why? Because managers, any manager, would regularly walk by and ask him how he was doing, what he needed, how they could help him, a culture of genuine care.
But at his other hotel job,
Total contrast. Managers would constantly patrol, trying to catch people doing things wrong, always looking for mistakes. Unsurprisingly, Noah kept his head below the radar there, doing the minimum.
it makes you really wonder, doesn't it? Why do so many leaders ask, how do I get the most out of my people? It's framed as extraction.
It's a fundamentally flawed question. Noah's the same person at both jobs. Same skills, same potential. But his performance and engagement differ dramatically based on the environment. The infinitely better question is,
How do I create an environment where my people can work to their natural best?
exactly. It's not about manipulation, it's about cultivating the conditions for their success.
Which brings us to the absolutely crucial concept of the circle of safety.
Yes. This is an environment within an organization where people feel psychologically safe. Safe to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes without fear of humiliation.
To ask for help when they need it, take responsibility without being punished, knowing they'll be supported, not shamed.
Right. It's about building deep reciprocal trust. As Brené Brown says, it's the stacking and layering of small moments and reciprocal vulnerability over time. Without this trust, people lie, hide mistakes, fake competence.
Creating hidden cracks that eventually break the whole organization.
Precisely.
There was a compelling example from the Castle Rock Police Department.
Yeah, Chief Jack Cawley. He took over a struggling department, low morale, felt unsupported. He held listening sessions and heard this consistent, simple fear. Officers were afraid to walk to their cars at night in the exposed parking lot.
And previous management had dismissed it, prioritized guns over fences.
Right. But Cawley understood the deeper message. He immediately built a fence around the lot. This small thing sent a profound message. Leadership had their backs, truly heard them.
It created that foundational circle of safety.
Which, in turn, led to dramatically improved information flow and better community relations. Trust isn't built with grand gestures alone, but consistent, empathetic actions.
Another truly powerful example is Alan Mulalley's turnaround at Ford.
Oh, legendary. When he became CEO in 2006, Ford was hemorrhaging money, near collapse. He introduced weekly business plan reviews with color-coded project status, green, yellow, red.
But for weeks, only green slides, because the previous CEO punished bad news.
Exactly, a deeply entrenched fear culture. Mulally knew it wasn't the truth. He persisted week after week, patiently asking, "We are going to lose billions. Is there anything that's not going well here?" He invited vulnerability.
Until finally Mark Fields showed a red slide, expecting to be fired.
Right. But Mullally's reaction was revolutionary. He clapped. Then he offered help, depersonalizing it. You have a problem. You are not the problem.
Wow. That act, meeting vulnerability with support.
It was the turning point. It built the trust needed for truth to emerge, enabling the problem-solving critical for Ford's survival and resurgence. Trust isn't just a soft skill, it's a strategic imperative.
This idea of prioritizing trust extends deeply into evaluating talent too, like with the Navy SEALs.
Absolutely. The SEALs evaluate candidates on two axes: technical competence, performance, and character; trust, humility, accountability, having teammates' backs, positive influence.
And they prefer high trust, even if performance isn't top tier initially, over low trust high performers.
Yes, because low trust, high performers are considered toxic. They prioritize their own careers, create unhealthy environments, undermine teamwork, ultimately damaging the organization.
So trust is the multiplier of performance.
Exactly. Leaders must consistently ask, are they coachable? Invest in developing both technical and human skills. Only truly uncoachable individuals should be removed from the circle of safety.
And the tangible results of trusting teams are remarkable. The Shell URSA oil rig example.
Incredible story. Rick Fox, the rig manager, initially a tough, safety-focused guy, scoffed at touchy-feely stuff. But after a workshop changed his relationship with his son, he was convinced. He brought the consultant, a Holocaust survivor, to his crew.
And fostering psychological safety actually improved performance.
Dramatically. The URSA crew felt safe to raise concerns, admit errors, offer ideas. This led to one of the industry's best safety records, 99% uptime versus 95% average, 43% better production, and exceeding environmental goals.
So trust comes before performance.
That's the key insight. It enables performance.
This principle is even in Marine Corps training. Prioritizing will before resources, trust before performance.
Deeply embedded, Officer Candidate School evaluates future officers on leadership qualities, honesty, integrity, courage, resilience, judgment during obstacle courses. But critically, not on successfully completing the obstacle itself.
Why not? Seems counterintuitive.
Because they understand good leaders sometimes fail due to circumstances, and bad leaders sometimes succeed through luck. They bias for will before resources, trust before performance, ensuring they develop leaders who create environments where teams collectively overcome challenges.
Cultivating leaders who inspire sustained effort in infinite challenges. Makes sense.
Okay.
Practice number 3, study your worthy rivals.
Right. This requires a fundamental, almost counterintuitive shift. In an infinite game, others aren't just competitors to beat. They are worthy rivals who actually help us improve.
Pushing us to innovate and get better. You had a personal experience with this, right? With Adam Grant.
I did. When he first emerged, I admit I saw him purely as a competitor. This fueled a finite mindset in me, insecurity, distraction, unhealthy focus on him instead of my own work, draining energy.
Until you shared a stage and were honest about it, you make me unbelievably insecure.
Yeah, and his response, the insecurity is mutual, was a real turning point. That reciprocal vulnerability changed everything.
How so?
Since that day, my mindset completely shifted. No more wasting energy comparing rankings or metrics. I genuinely see Adam as a worthy rival. It liberated me, led to partnership, mutual success, even friendship. The insight is we can both succeed. People can buy more than one book.
It's about strategically choosing rivals who expose your weaknesses and push you to improve.
Exactly. Which is essential to stay in the infinite game and evolve.
In the corporate world, Apple has masterfully used worthy rivals, like IBM back in the day.
Oh, yeah. IBM dominated mainframes, initially dismissed PCs. As Apple gained traction, IBM entered the PC market. Ironically, IBM's entry actually helped Apple.
Wow. Didn't it increase competition?
It did, but Apple brilliantly used IBM as a foil to define its own just cause. As one early Apple employee said, they were the Navy. We wanted to be the pirates.
Empowering individuals, creativity, rebellion. IBM was Big Blue, the establishment.
Exactly. IBM's corporate nature gave Apple a clear identity to stand against, reinforcing their unique appeal and galvanizing their community.
And this evolution of worthy rivals continues for Apple today, with Google and Facebook.
Right. They represent a new big brother tracking data, monetizing info. Apple strategically distinguishes itself by prioritizing privacy, not selling user data.
Reinforcing their founding cause of individual empowerment in a new context, keeping them relevant.
But there's a danger here. Cause blindness.
Okay, what's that?
It's when we become so wrapped up in our own cause, or so convinced of the wrongness of a rival's cause, that we fail to objectively recognize their strengths or our own weaknesses.
Believing they're unworthy or no real threat.
Precisely. This blunts humility, exaggerates arrogance, stifles innovation, reduces flexibility. It drains the will and resources needed to stay in the game.
A stark example is how the U.S. handled the end of the Cold War.
Definitely. The Cold War was an infinite game. No clear end, no fixed objective, rules always shifting. Yet when the Soviet Union, drained of will and resources, dropped out in '91, the U.S. declared victory.
A classic finite mindset applied to an infinite game.
And it led directly to arrogance and caused blindness. Instead of humbly recognizing the enduring nature of global politics and preparing for new, distributed worthy rivals, non-state actors, complex economic rivalries, new tensions, the U.S. lost focus and humility.
That finite declaration of winning ironically unprepared us for what came next.
Exactly, the profound lesson. In an infinite game, when one rival drops out, others always emerge. The game never ends. It just changes players and forms.
Wow. Okay, practice number 4, prepare for existential flexibility. Sounds dramatic.
It is, in a way. This isn't about reacting to crisis. It's the courageous capacity to proactively initiate an extreme disruption to your existing business model or strategy.
In order to more effectively advance your just cause, offensive change, not defensive reaction.
Right. An infinite-minded player revels in the unpredictable, embraces surprises, is prepared to be transformed, always looking for ways to do something new aligned with their purpose.
Totally different from, say, newspapers defensively going digital just to survive. That doesn't inspire.
No. An existential flex reignites passion, unlocks opportunities, reshapes the organization, even when it's currently successful and has a lot to lose.
Walt Disney's a fantastic example.
Perfect example. Hugely successful film studio. But he realized the finite nature of movies limited his deeper just cause, offering escape, joy, immersion. He wanted something more enduring.
So he gambled everything on Disneyland.
Immense personal and professional risk. Leveraged everything to create Disneyland via WD Enterprises. He had more to lose than early in his career. Disneyland was conceived as infinite, ever-evolving, immersing audiences, fulfilling his deeper purpose.
And he brought passionate people from the film studio who shared his enthusiasm.
Exactly. Recreating startup energy even though his main company was thriving. A proactive, visionary leap born of infinite thinking.
Apple also demonstrated this with the Macintosh.
Powerfully. Founders' just cause. Empowering individuals via personal computers. Steve Jobs, driven by the cause, made the incredibly difficult choice to abandon established paths and prior investment to fully commit to the Macintosh.
A textbook existential flex. Proactive disruption to advance the mission of making computing accessible.
Right. It revolutionized personal computing, made it user-friendly for the masses. So disruptive, it forced Microsoft to follow years later with Windows 2.0, mimicking the Mac's interface. Apple wasn't reacting. They redefined the game.
And for a cautionary tale of failing this, Kodak.
Oh, the painful irony. Kodak invented the digital camera, had the tech, the patents, the head start.
But they were so focused on film profits.
Driven by a finite focus on existing, highly profitable film, they actively suppressed the new technology. Executives, thinking short-term, not wanting to disrupt current revenue, failed the existential flex.
Blinded by the golden goose, clung to the old model.
Which ultimately led to their devastating bankruptcy. A clear, painful example of finite strategies failing in an infinite game. Sometimes, to survive, you have to be willing to destroy what's working for a higher purpose.
That takes courage. Which leads to our fifth and maybe most challenging practice: demonstrate the courage to lead.
Yeah, this isn't just about bravery in adversity. It's the profound willingness to take risks for the good of an unknown future, operating to a standard higher than just legal compliance.
A rigorous standard of ethics and integrity, speaking up against pressure that violates ethical codes.
And a major insidious threat here is ethical fading.
Where pressure compromises our will to do the right thing.
Exactly. Remember the Good Samaritan experiment. Seminary students studying the parable were far less likely to help someone in distress when under time pressure. 63% helped with low pressure, only 10% with high pressure. Pressure makes us choose expedient, finite options over infinite principles.
And this pressure was at the heart of the Wells Fargo scandal.
Squarely. Thousands of employees over years opened millions of fake accounts. Not a few bad apples. It was systemic, driven by extreme pressure, aggressive demands, unrealistic sales quotas from leadership.
And the lack of accountability was shocking. The fine was tiny compared to profits execs shielded.
Right. The company initially claimed it wasn't who Wells Fargo is, but is a clear, tragic case of systemic ethical fading. Short-term gains overshadowed principles.
Another example, Mylan and the EpiPen price hikes.
Egregious. Aggressively raised prices, sometimes 32% annually, largely tied to executive bonuses based on earnings per share. CEO Heather Bresch displayed profound ethical fading, seemingly unable to see wrongdoing.
Even tried to frame it as a catalyst for healthcare reform.
Unbelievable. They were later fined for misclassifying EpiPens to overcharge the government. It also exposed how companies use euphemisms, managing externalities, gamification, data mining, reducing headcounts to distance themselves from unethical impacts.
So true courage means choosing a higher standard than just legal.
Absolutely. When a company defends unethical actions saying, well, it's legal, trust is obliterated. It's like a cheating partner saying, we're not married. It misses the point. Courage means acting before public outcry, proactively.
CVS provides a powerful counterexample, demonstrating courage.
Yes. Despite significant Wall Street criticism, Jim Cramer saying it won't fly, CVS courageously removed all tobacco products from its stores.
Aligning with its purpose as a healthcare company, costing $2 billion in revenue initially.
But it garnered immense goodwill and trust. Remember Marielle's Science, the employee whose mother called her in tears, proud her daughter worked there? Their stock price, after a dip, recovered and grew significantly. Courage anchored in a just cause pays off long term. Upholding purpose builds invaluable trust.
Even companies with an infinite mindset can stray, though, right? Like Disney or Walmart.
They can. Disney buying Miramax, releasing content not aligned with its cause, Walmart losing its way after Sam Walton. But new CEOs, like Doug McMillon at Walmart or Satya Nadella at Microsoft, faced crossroads.
Coming in after finite-minded leaders.
And they chose to steer their companies decisively back towards their original just cause. Courageous leaders know they don't have all the answers or total control. They rely on their just cause and each other.
And they foster that courage in their teams because employees mirror leaders.
Exactly. If leaders prioritize integrity, the team follows.
We see the transformative power of this with Doug Parker, merging America West and American Airlines.
Great example. After 9/11, his airline was collapsing. Initially, he saw it as a business problem, a finite challenge of avoiding bankruptcy.
But a conversation with a flight attendant changed things.
Yes, Mary, a single working mom whose job meant everything. That turned it from a business objective, a moonshot of saving jobs, into a deeply personal mission. It ignited his passion.
But he later realized saving jobs was still finite.
Right, within the infinite game of aviation. Inspired by Bob Chapman's people before numbers philosophy, Parker found his deeper, infinite just cause, creating an environment where employees feel genuinely cared for, recognized, fulfilled.
And this infinite mindset led to better contracts, even when competitors leapfrog them.
Exactly, making them among the best paid. Parker and his team now intentionally attract long-term investors like Berkshire Hathaway, who align with this infinite vision. As Parker said, we need to care for our team so that they can care for our customers. That's how we will create value for our shareholders.
Prioritizing people and purpose leads to long-term financial success, a powerful demonstration.
It really is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring it back to a fundamental, deeply personal truth. Our individual lives are finite. We come and go.
We're born, we die.
But life itself, the grand human endeavor, is an infinite game. We are merely the finite players in that unending drama. We have wins, losses, celebrations, mourning.
But the ultimate goal isn't to win life. It's to perpetuate the game, contribute to something that continues beyond us.
Which brings us to a crucial personal choice for each of you listening. How will you choose to live your own infinite life?
The goal isn't accumulating the most wealth or power or accolades by the time your finite game ends. It's about perpetuating the game through service, contribution, lasting impact.
When we look back, we want to be remembered not for our bank balance, but for what we did for others, right? A devoted mother, a loving father, a loyal friend, a compassionate leader.
Exactly. It's about consciously considering the second and third order effects of your decisions today, not just immediate finite outcomes.
What impact will your choices have on the game tomorrow, on others next year, on the world long after you're gone?
This deep dive offers a powerful framework for making choices that truly matter, choices that contribute to something bigger than yourself, something that endures and inspires others to keep playing their part in the infinite game of life.
So what will you choose to do with this newfound understanding?